Guys, it's Beth. Welcome to another episode of Remorselessly Biblical. As always, I am really glad that you're here with me. I love spending this time with you. I love sharing space with you. And mostly, I love introducing you to people that are new to me as well, because you know that this is like the story of God and how He puts people in our lives at just the right time for just the right reason, so that we can see who we are becoming, right? How do we show up in our stories and become the people that God created us to be? For me, I think that answer is by going outside of your comfort zones, by spending time in the presence of people that perhaps at one point in the course of your journey you wouldn't have hung out with. You wouldn't have spent time with them back in the day because you didn't really want to see anything differently than what you knew, than what made you comfortable. That has been my experience to date. And I will tell you guys, growth and change and transformation and being uncomfortable, it's hard work. It is hard work. So what does that mean for us? That becoming the people that God has always intended us to become is not easy, but with intentionality and with faith, it's going to happen. It happens over time, over the course of our existence and over the course of our lives. We share things with vulnerability, and when we do it transparently, honestly, authentically, man, the things that are on the other side of that are way more beautiful than any of us could ever have imagined. So, speaking of beautiful, you guys, this week I have joining us on the show, Shelly Moore Bartholomew. So I know some of you didn't know me back in the day, but for those of you that have been watching the show, you may have picked up on the fact that I might not have been super nice growing up. It was my defense mechanism. I, as a blessing and a curse, we talked about this, right? My blessing, my giftings have from God, words, writing, lots of words. Let's go back to the words. But our greatest blessings and giftings can oftentimes, if we don't wield them correctly, be also our greatest curses. So what I did showing up in the world in a self-preservation mode, when I felt like people didn't see me for who I was, when I felt like people were attacking me or coming at me, I used the gifts of my words to tear other people down. Not proud of it. It's what I did. Thankfully, after meeting Jesus, I have changed over the course of time, and through His unwavering, reckless love for me and for you and for all of us. So I am really happy that Shelly Moore Bartholomew is here with me today, us today, instead of like circa 1990s, because you guys, in 1997, Shelly was crowned the Miss Teen USA. She holds the 1997 Miss Teen USA title. I was an athlete in high school. I pretended not to like those girls. Today, I wish I could go back in time and say, why didn't you? What was the actual issue? Not with them, but it was with me. So I don't know if you guys can actually kind of connect on that point, that you just really started to, when you didn't feel accepted, when you didn't feel seen and heard and valued for the person that you truly are, you started to show up in a way that was not honoring to others, was not nice to others. You felt maybe compared to others, right? Comparison's a real thing in this society, in our world, in our everyday. We know that, especially as females. But Shelly won the 1997 Miss Teen USA title. I want to go on with her biography before you guys meet her, because she's just amazing. In 1996, Shelly won the Miss Northern Tennessee local title before competing for and winning the 1997 Teen USA title. Okay, there's like 50 states in the United States, so she beat out 49. Let's just talk about that a second. I enjoy that, right? I like people who win, who show up and say, I can do this thing, and I'm going to go on this trajectory. I'm not going to give up. So, clearly when she won the title of Miss Northern Tennessee before competing in Miss Teen USA, that was her preparation. Oftentimes we see people that aren't by worldly standards successful, and we either get jealous or we get mad, or we'd like, oh, look at them. How did they do this? Well, hard work is typically the answer. Not giving up, believing in yourself, believing in the person that God created you to be is oftentimes the answer. So she was also the first delegate from Tennessee to win the Miss Teen USA or Miss USA title. So, she really, broke the proverbial glass ceiling, if you will. She was born in Jacksonville, Florida. She later moved to Knoxville, Tennessee. She graduated from high school in 97 and studied education at UT, University of Tennessee. In 1999, she married her former University of Tennessee football player, Will Bartholomew. He was the former football player, I should say, not hers. But she's come to love football, I'm sure, because together the couple have 3 children, and they founded D1 Sports Training, which is a state-of-the-art training facility. We actually have one here locally. I've been to it. It's amazing. And, currently operates at 6 6 dozen, 72 locations across the country. She's humble. She's awesome. She is an author, a first-time author. Her book releases very, very soon. I think like in 2 days. And it is called This Beautiful Mess. You guys know I love a good oxymoron when I hear it because Shelly is absolutely beautiful. And she's going to talk to us about the mess that she came through to get to the point in her life where she is today. So please join me in welcoming Shelly Bartholomew to the show. So hi, Shelly. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really, really happy to meet you and happy that you are here.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. You know, one of the things I always start out the show with for our listeners and viewers is just explain to them how we met, if in fact there was a prior connection, because, and I'll let you tell the story, but in this case, there wasn't. So just a quick overview about how you and I came to be sitting here now.
Yeah. So my sweet PR person, Kathy, just sent me a text actually and said, hey, there's this great podcast that I think you'd be interested in, because we both agreed that we wouldn't just do anything, but we would really focus on podcast, any kind of media that really relates to my heart in the book, everything that I want to come alongside, walk alongside other people, which obviously ended up being you, of course. And she just said, I really think you're going to love it. Like, here is a background of it. And I said, absolutely, sign me up. When can I get on? So I'm thrilled to be on the show.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing it, because that is so true. You and I were talking a little bit about just this before, which is God's providence, how people show up in our lives at just the right time for just the right purpose that really is outside of anything to do with us in a weird way. It's just sort of like when we show up in the world to help other people be inspired, say, you can do this. This is the life lesson that I learned. I'm here to show up for you to see if maybe this is helpful. Then, you know, the rest just kind of works itself out. So that's kind of where I'd like to start. Will you share with our viewers and listeners, like, a little bit about your backstory, you know, just where you're from, if you grew up in the faith, just kind of like the high points before we dive into your book?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that question. So I grew up in Jacksonville, Florida. I live in Nashville, Tennessee right now with where my husband is from, but grew up in Jacksonville. And yes, I grew up going to church every Sunday, Southern Baptist background, and which was interesting meeting my husband, because we kind of had to meet in the middle. He was a very evangelical background. And we bounced each other really well. I mean, complemented each other really well, and and really learned a lot from each other. And so where we are today in sort of a non-denominational church that we're at right now, that it's just been kind of an interesting journey for us, being, you know, growing up in the Bible Belt. And so anyway, it was my mom, dad, and my sister and I moved from Jacksonville, Florida to Sevierville, Tennessee, of all places, and then on to Knoxville. I know, it was quite a change. Like, the jokes just never ended, because I was in 8th grade. It was like, oh, well, you can leave all your shoes here, Shelly, because you don't need them in Tennessee in those creeks where you're going to go to school, you know. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Yeah. So, you know, I was the joke. And but yeah, definitely my mom and my dad were big believers in just making sure that we had, you know, our life verses, and we were in church on Sundays, and just really encouraged us in our faith all growing up, and still do today.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. I like the part where you said your husband's name is Will, right?
Yes.
Yes. And I love the part where you said you had to like find that middle ground, that compromise, because it took me a long time, like 30 years, to figure out that denominations were different. You know, when you grow up and nobody really tells you, hey, there are people in the world who, in my case, aren't Catholic. I'm like, wait, what? What do those people believe? You know, it's just, but when you come together and you say, talk to me about your upbringing, talk to me about your belief systems, and then you have a family together, it's an interesting way to then sort of say, what do we actually stand for? What are our values and where do they come from and all that stuff? So
absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
The other part about your story that really made me smile, and we talked about this, is that a lot of folks that are on the show know my backstory, which is I may or may not have been the girl growing up in like the late 80s, early 90s who would like throw cheerleaders into the locker. Like,
Oh.
yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the thing, right? Like, this is the crazy thing about women. Now, when you figure out how to be the person that God made you to be and how to have self-acceptance and like, I'm good, right? After all of those things, women have never been the enemy, right? Like, as you and I talked about, it's kind of like, I don't know if I liked any of my boyfriends growing up anyway. I just did it really because that's what I thought you were supposed to do. But there's a part of me that when I saw your bio and I'm like, wait a minute, she actually won like Miss Teen USA. I need to know more about this because one, I feel like I owe somebody an apology. But two, I was in a weird way, I watched all of that because I really respected it, but sort of like the street cred was like, oh no, there'd be no way anybody would care about that. I loved it because it's hard work. And I loved it because it showed people who had passion and who were standing in front of people saying, this is probably not super comfortable. I might be a little afraid. I'm competing, but I still am this person with so much more depth than what these potential people are assuming about me. That's really interesting to me. Will you just talk about that whole thing, that part of your life?
Yeah, it's, I talk about a lot in the book about expectations and how often what we expect is actually just the story we're telling ourselves. So in my case, and with a cheerleader or whatever, I had definitely those girls I wasn't super nice to, or just automatically without knowing them. We still do this today. And whether it was from the boys, pitting us against each other, which totally happened and created this whole dynamic, which was very unhealthy and did not, serve just women supporting women like we are today, gratefully. But, I was often confronted with what people expected me to be like, expected me to think like. And so definitely whenever, I was competing, that really played a role. And I had to really do a deep dive inside to say, okay, well, who am I? Can I do this? What does it mean when I stand up here on the stage? And unfortunately, and you'll see in my story, and I go into this in the book, early on in the book is, and I've had so many people that have even read the preview go, I can't believe you felt that way when you were walking across the stage. Like, how could you have felt insecure? How could you have felt uncomfortable? Like, I had no idea what was going on. Actually, the editor that worked closely with me in the book watched the YouTube video and was like, I literally watched it 3 times. Like, I could not, like, you played it off so well, but what were we taught to do? Right. When we were young, when the boys were pitting us against each other, we learned to just put on whatever costume we could that felt like we were protected, and we wore that costume out. Well, that's the costume I was wearing. And I wore it really well by then because it was my defense mechanism, And so when I was walking across that stage, I definitely wasn't feeling like I was anything but confident.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, because it's hard to get to that point. And I've, been on the other side of that too, as I know many women have in this life. It's like people see what they want to see. They make immediate judgments, and they have these assumptions about how we are every single day, how she's so lucky, or she's so pretty, or she's so fill in the blank with the adjectives. Instead of saying, tell me your story, tell me what you stand for. Tell me what you've gone through. Who are you? Yeah. And when you guys hear, when Shelly's referring to her book, so the title is This Beautiful Mess, which let's just talk about that a second. Perfect title. Love it. I was immediately, as soon as I saw it, I went, yes, I need to read this book. And so one of the quotes that an early reader said about your book is this. I love it. It says, Shelly Bartholomew's vulnerable and hilarious storytelling empowers you to embrace the unpretty and unfinished parts of your story, to find beauty in the in-between and laugh at life's messes along the way. So how important do you think just laughing at some, like, humor, what does that get us through, right? Like, how can you share some of that, your experiences with just that?
Gosh, yeah, absolutely. if you don't know what laughing does to your soul, first thing I would say is find something that makes you laugh and try it. Because, about the journey that we're in or the in between that we're in, but we can look at it and pull ourselves out of it and look at it, try to look at it from the outside and try to find the beauty in it still, because there's something in there to be learned to learn from. There's something in there that is ultimately making us into a stronger person, specifically if it is a struggle. And that process, when I looked back on my life, I just thought, gosh, I'm so tired of looking at it as regrets, because I was like, I regret this, or I regret, oh, if I could have just done this better as a parent, gosh, if I would have done this instead, looking back and going, I don't want my kids to feel like that. I don't want anybody else to feel like that. And so teaching them, my kids, to say, there's a lot of beauty in that. There's a lot of gratefulness in that. And one of my reasons for writing this whole book was I was young when I had kids. We were young when we got married. I feel like I was the first of a lot of things, of doing a lot of big life making a lot of big life decisions. And so I felt lonely so often, like on that stage when I explained in the beginning, all of these people staring at me. And I just felt lonely, like nobody understands. And that is what I wanted to, convey. The reason that it ended up being a book and not just a journal was I just don't want other women to feel lonely. And there's got to be a woman out there that needs this book. And if it's just one,
oh my goodness,
God, find her.
Yes.
That's all.
Yeah.
And
not
then,
every part.
Yeah. And then there'll be a lot of other available for people that maybe don't need it, but
yeah. I think it's going to be the total opposite, because you were exactly right. And the thing is, it's just about saying, me too. I have this experience too. And when we come together, no matter what that Me Too experience is, there's something about showing up in camaraderie and saying, you know what? Thank you for being brave enough to share that, because I've been afraid to share it, but I felt the exact same thing. And so back to the point about just being humorous, right? I had somebody in the show, Amberly Neese, a great friend of mine, and she says, it's holy humor.
Yeah. So
she really finds there's holiness in authenticity and just laughter, because if you take everything so seriously, like life's hard enough, right? How are we going to get through it unless we can learn to laugh at ourselves a little bit along the way?
Yeah, it's really funny because speaking of laughter, so to answer, I sort of didn't answer your question before, but when I was writing this book, some of the hardest parts that I thought were going to be, because I go into my childhood, so I had to go back with my parents, and I'm from a broken home, and so I asked some really kind of uncomfortable questions, and we just ended up laughing, like, oh my goodness, like life is funny. Like, even when you look back at what's the unfunny, like if you just laugh at it and go, you know what, it happened. It happened. Like, and we got through it. Do about it. We got through it. Yeah.
We got through it. And that's really the definition of a humor, right? It's like with enough time. You got to put the time element, because a lot of times when you're going through it, it's not so funny in the moment.
It is not. It's when you just know that you can look back on it one day.
That's it.
Look forward to that.
That's it. So tell us why you actually decided to write the book like that is so personal. You talk about your childhood. It's very raw, at times just very vulnerable. Like, what was maybe the impetus that got you to say, I'm going to write this book?
Yeah. The honest truth to why is I just could not write it anymore. Yeah. I've had the words, I've had the journals, I've had the kids that specifically, I talk about my daughter. I think just because I have a girl and two boys, and I think specifically just because I was a girl, simply female, I think that as she journeyed through her life and I raised her, and she's now an adult. I mean, she's 18, turning 19. And I think going through those moments, I knew I can't not write this anymore for her, for the woman that she wants to be and she's becoming. So to tell my story, to be vulnerable, uncomfortable, is worth it all.
Yes.
If they know they're not alone.
Yes.
She's going out in the world. How can I be brave? How can I tell my kids to be brave if I'm not willing to be?
That's right.
And so I hit rock bottom, and I was like, Lord, you take this. You got to do everything. I don't know what I'm doing at all.
Oh, has your daughter read it?
She has. So we just got them last night.
Okay.
We just got them. I have given her, she's read some of the chapters, but she really wanted to. So she's read like a lot of bits and pieces, but our whole family was like, we're going to wait until we actually get it all, and everybody will get their book and read it. So she's reading it now.
That's awesome. I only have one child who's 24, and she's a she. So I feel you with that, because I was so nervous / unable to not do it. I thought, for all of the things I wish I would have known, for all the things I have learned, she's my go-to person. She's the person in this world that I want to, as a mother, right, say, how can I make your load a little less heavy? How can I sort of unburden you from, and the answer might be, I can't, but yet I need to do everything I can to at least equip you to read about this, to say, this is what I learned, make your choices. I'm going to love you unconditionally anyway. For me, it just really, nothing is more powerful in terms of how I see God, how much I know we're unconditionally loved, than my love for her. So,
because he lets us do what we want to do here. He lets us have free choice.
Yes.
And that's how, he's there as an example to parenting. And so I love that, because that is exactly how we parent as well. We can only give you what we can give you humanly. You are ours too, on loan. And so, I love that.
Did writing the book sort of help you, in retrospect, look at your life through maybe a different lens, or how has it changed you?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. You could probably answer. You probably already know the answer to this. Writing a book yourself. I honestly had no idea what I was going to put myself through. Or my family, or just reliving the stories, reevaluating them this side of life. It was funny, because I thought I almost wrote this book in my 20s. And I think there's a lot of girls that are writing books at 20 that will be wonderful for what they are right now. And I hope they write one at 40 as well, because it's just so interesting, the perspective that I have now versus then. And it's also given me, I think, a gentleness, and definitely I don't think I realized how judgmental I was until I wrote this book. I don't think there's any judgment left in me.
Yeah. Wow.
It's the most humbling experience, especially now that you write a book and it's the Instagram and the social media and putting yourself out there and everything else. I'm like, oh dear.
Yes.
No.
Yes. So, everything you said, spot on. And the word is overused, I think, when people write a book, but it is very cathartic. It's very healing.
Oh, so yeah.
But just like you said, it forces you to take a really introspective, like, hard look at yourself, to be like, okay, I'm writing about experiences that made me feel a certain way, but what am I doing, perhaps still, to perpetuate other people feeling the same way? Like, how am I guilty of this?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's hard work.
Like an open wound that it's like, I'm wondering, actually, I'm like, I'm coming out of this. Like it's my paper baby is born. It's actually here. Like, when's that wound going to close? And I'm like, I think it's going to stay open for a while. So just the vulnerability aspect. And I'm so grateful for it, because then it's created a conversation with my family that is very authentic. Like, I don't have anything judgy or really helicopter parent. Like, I don't have anything else to say other than I love you.
That is awesome.
Wonderful.
Was your husband super supportive in the process? Like, did you have to write during like crazy hours of the day, or what was that like?
Yeah, he really was. So we also own a business called D1 Sports Training. And so we, he's sort of been through this process when I was wrangling all the kids and popping out babies, doing all of that.
Yeah.
He kind of like, I feel like we did a kind of like a flip a little bit, but I mean, he's still super busy with that, but I think having older kids helped, but he was super, super supportive, but it kind of scared him a little bit. I think it'll be interesting to have him talk about it a little bit, because a lot of it was like, we didn't need to do this. He's like, I think a part of him probably was like, why do you need to do this? Like, I don't know why you can't, like, that's why I got all those journals for,
Yeah.
because it's been a process for everybody and a sacrifice for everybody. But in the end, I know he's super proud, of this accomplishment. And I keep telling him he needs to write one. So
yeah, we have a D1 sports complex, like fairly new. I'm in Grand Rapids, Michigan, by the way.
Oh, okay. Yes, you do. I love those owners too. Oh, they're awesome. They were at our summit. Like, yeah, that's great. Yeah.
They're like 2 miles down the road. So
yes.
yeah,
yes.
When I read that on your bio, I love these people. I have no idea, never met them before in my life, but like I can hang out with them. When I wrote my book, it was funny because there was obviously, it's hard to write a book unless you're writing straight up fiction, which oftentimes is based on reality anyway. But like when people know you're writing a nonfiction book and you're taking some of your life experiences, people get very angsty. Like, what is she going to say about me?
Oh, girl, yes. I got some of that from the home front.
Yes. It's hard not to.
It was so funny because some of the stories were taken out. Like I have a ton of funny stories about my boys when they were babies. I mean, I'm talking like tearing apart poopy diapers, like hulking through the net in the crib. Like I've got crazy, and some of them got cut. I mean, I had so many stories that I didn't want to make it especially for my first book. It's like, the audiobook is like 4.5 hours instead of like an 8.5, I mean, I wanted to make it a certain size.
Yeah.
And so some of them got cut, but yeah, it started to be like a competition a little bit in our house too. And then on the flip side with like my parents and everything, I think my biological dad I think he's probably a pretty nervous about, because I do go through some hard stories, and he's been married several times. And, I just told him, I said, I'm very vulnerable, and I need you to know I'm going to tell it's my story, and I'm sorry if it hurts you. I don't want it to. My hope is that you'll come and talk to me if it does. And that's really all I can do with it. So.
Right. I love that. Yeah. I am. So Olivia's dad, we met in college, and, so I got married when I was 21, 22. And so I had to have like legal releases from most of the folks that I referenced, all of them, actually. Some of them declined. But at any rate, he read it. He was super supportive, and he goes, hold up, I got one question. I've known you for 30 years. I get like one paragraph.
You're like, and that tells me so much.
Right.
That confirms so much.
I was like, you should be thanking me that I left a whole lot of chapters out, but no.
Okay, all right. Hey, there's always a sequel,
That's
so
right.
I can write a book.
That's right. But to your point earlier, like we are not the same women today that we were in our younger years. And thank God for that, because I mean, we're not supposed to be.
Right.
I would hate feeling stuck if I said, oh yeah, I'm exactly who I was all those years ago, because I didn't have all of those experiences to pull from. And it's just, this is the whole point of life. And sometimes people are so hard on themselves. And that's my last question for you. It leads to this is, what's the message, the one message that you hope people will take away after reading this beautiful mess?
I think the message is a little bit of what we were talking about before, is you're not alone. Like everyone has messes. We all live in some sort of a mess. And more often than not, we're trying to hide that mess. Yes. And the person next to you, that expectation, the person that you look at and go, she doesn't have any, like, how could she feel like I do? That is the story you're telling yourself. And they're probably trying to hide it just like you are. Mm-hmm. And so the biggest thing I could really just translate is, you're not alone. None of us are perfect. Let's just embrace our messes and say no to perfection. that's my prayer and my heart's beat for the women that get their hands on this book. So
thank you so much for writing. And we can find it on Amazon. Is that right?
Amazon. So you can go to my website, which I'm sure is on the show notes, shellybartholomew.com. You can actually just download the free preview, see if it's for you. I mean, every book is not for every person, but I hope it's for you. And yeah, you can download the preview, and then right below that, pre-order on Amazon, and you should be getting it. I think their Amazon shipping them out in about a week.
Yay. I am so excited for you. Proud of you for doing it.
Thank you. You as well. You as well. I have not been able to read your book yet, but I ordered it just before. So I'm excited.
I can't wait. And we should just reconvene at some later date and say, this is what happened on the book tour. These are the lessons that we learned,
I know. I love it. I can't wait to follow your story. And now the podcast, I even started listening to a few today. So I will definitely be sharing that, and just really enjoyed meeting you. And thank you for having me on the show.
Yes, you got it. All right, readers, viewers, listeners, you will be readers. I'm calling you readers now in advance of ordering Shelly's book. All of her information will be in the show notes. And you guys, thank you for being here this week. And Shelly, again, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye. Thanks for joining me this week, you guys. Another episode of Remorselessly Biblical. I hope you guys really enjoyed our time spent with Shelly. One of the things I thought was really interesting is when she was talking about her experience as Miss Teen USA, and when she competed in that competition, how she said that she sort of put on this imposter version almost, right? She said that she just had this self-defense mechanism. She showed up, she definitely put the preparation in, she was there, she competed, but she felt lonely. Did you guys pick up on that? A Miss Teen USA winner felt lonely. How many of us as women, when we're comparing ourselves to what we see from the externally with somebody, right? We see them before we know them, and we think, wow, she's beautiful. Yeah, she is. But we also equate that to, she must be happy. She must have it all. She must not feel like I feel. And that is why she wrote this book, you guys. That's why she decided to write This Beautiful Mess. Yes, the woman's beautiful. There are many beautiful women in the world. I don't think she cares necessarily about that. I think she cares about the fact that she felt messy on the inside, and she wants to say, it is okay for you to feel lonely and messy on the inside. It's okay to go through messy times in life. We're all in it together. God loves us unconditionally anyway. You guys, you have mattering and value and worth. This is my reminder to you to show up on your own journeys and your own stories remorselessly, which means without guilt in spite of wrongdoing, without guilt in spite of messiness, without guilt always, because guilt gets us stuck, keeps us stuck. Don't be stuck. Be you, exactly who God created you to be. And I will see you guys here in 2 weeks. Thanks again for being here. And until next time, I wish you all kinds of peace and joy on your journeys, and especially peace.